brownies, a favourite treat of mine, which we all need in times of lockdown. So the first thing that I've done is prepared my working area and got everything that I need to make these brownies ready. So I've got my scales for measuring my ingredients, I've got my cookbook here, I've got chocolate, some dark chocolate which is going to go into the brownies, a mixing bowl and a mixing spoon. I've got some sugar, so I've measured out the sugar earlier, so I've got some sugar in the bowl. I've got 2 eggs for the brownies. I've got some vanilla essence, some cocoa powder, plain flour. I've got butter, unsalted butter, some dark chocolate. You can also use plain chocolate. I've also got my measuring spoons already. I've got the scissors for cutting open packets, a nice pair of scissors. And then I've got a chopping board for chopping up the butter later on with a table knife. Across here I've also prepped my baking tray. So I've got the baking tray prepped, and I've got the baking parchment or greaseproof paper all prepped to go in here. So that's my baking parchment. And of course I've got the cooker where I'm going to be cooking later on. So the cooker needs to be preheated, so I'll turn that on in a minute. So the first thing I'm going to do is set this aside, and I'm going to get my butter. I'll pop my butter out there. I'm going to chop it into squares. Some fairly large squares. I'm going to pop these into the mixing bowl, because this is going to be melted with the chocolate in a minute on the hob. So in goes the butter. Then I've got my chocolate squares for my chocolate that I showed you earlier on. And I'm going to break these chocolate squares in with the butter. Okay, so that's my chocolate squares and my butter, and I'm going to be melting the two of those together, so that's going to be done on the hob. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go and prep the hob. So I'm going to turn the hob on, and then I'm going to put a pan on the hob with a small amount of water in it. I'm going to heat that water up, and then I'm going to place this glass bowl into that water, and I'm going to gently mix until both of these ingredients melt and mix together. So here we have the butter and the chocolate cubes, and these are being melted together, and you can see the bubbling water beneath. So do get a grown-up to help you with this. So I'm just mixing them gently together. They're mixing very nicely, and it's quite hot. See, we want really nicely melted butter in here. Nice, smooth mixture. So a little bit more. Okay, it doesn't really matter if there are a couple of bits left out, but as smooth as possible. Okay, so we've now got the eggs whisked together, and we're going to pour the eggs into our mixture. And set that aside. So mix them in. Okay, so the next thing we're going to get is some baking powder. So we need half a teaspoon of baking powder. So these sachets come in a full teaspoon. So You could need half, or you just get a measuring spoon, so that's a 1 teaspoon or 5 ml equivalent. So I'll do it over this bowl here, so half a teaspoon, it's a bit too much. Okay, so half a level teaspoon really. Okay, so half a level teaspoon. That's the baking powder. We've got baking powder, 2 eggs, a teaspoon of vanilla essence. So just my measuring spoon. Okay, so a teaspoon of vanilla essence. I quite like smelling essence. It's got a really nice smell. Okay, so get that all in there. Give it a little mix. And there we go. Okie dokie, so a gentle mix, and it's coming together very nicely. A very tiny amount of salt, so by that I mean just enough to go into hand like that, and that's probably slightly too much, but a very, very tiny amount, just as if you're pinching, just a tiny pinch of salt. Okay, and then we're going to put some flour in. Shall do the sugar first of all. So loads of sugar here, which I weighed out earlier on, so soft light brown sugar. Mix the sugar in. Yummy treat. Excellent, it's looking really, really nice. Then the flour, which I'd measured out earlier. Okay. So once I get that in there, and the next ingredient I need is some cocoa powder. So just about 15 grams of cocoa powder, so it's not a lot. So I'm looking at my spoons here. So I'm going to measure that out. Digital scales are obviously better for this, but I'm going to make an approximation. Okay, so I make that about 2 tablespoons, so those are the bigger ones. Tablespoons are about 15 mils of cocoa powder. Put that back there. I'm going to mix these all together. So just double checking I've got all the right ingredients and I've put everything in. So I've used plain chocolate, unsalted butter, plain flour, brown sugar, a pinch of salt, cocoa powder, vanilla extract, 2 eggs, baking powder. If you really want to make fancy brownies, you could add in some nuts of your choice, but these are just going to be plain chocolate brownies. So mix everything together. No need to use a mixer because you're aiming to get sort of a mixture that sort of is a bit sticky. Okay, so a mixing spoon is the best tool here to get this done. So continue to give that a good mix. think that is nearly ready. Small bit of baking powder that wasn't mixed in properly. Okay, so that's mixed really nicely, the very sort of sticky mixture. Okay, so brownie mixture. Now it's time to put that into our baking pan. So I've got here a pan that I prepared earlier and a bit of baking parchment, not cut to size. But just pop that in so it covers the entire base of the baking pan. And again, you probably need a grown-up to do this, but pour the brownie mixture into the baking pan. So get it even across the baking pan. Baking is such a lovely thing to do. It's quite calming, and of course you get to eat what you've made afterwards, so there's always a bonus. Of course you can make lots of other treats, you know, Rice Krispie cakes, carrot cake, banana cake. There's loads of different things that you can make, and start experimenting, so changing some of the ingredients, adding new ingredients, as I mentioned before, adding perhaps walnuts to see what you can create. Okay, so that's our brownie mixture poured into the baking tray. Just spooning a bit of the extra mixture off of the mixing spoon into the mixture. So I don't want any of it to go to waste. Okie dokie. Oh, here we go, come on. Excellent. Okay, so put our brownies in the pan. And if there's any of the baking parchment hanging over, just use your scissors and trim it off. Okay, so you can cut that all off if you need to. So we've got the brownie mixture, which I'm then going to pop in the oven for about 25 minutes, and then I'll be back so we can sample the brownies. Now that the brownies are baking, it's time to tidy up our work area. So all of these items, I'm going to pop them into a dishwasher, or they can be hand washed. So I'm going to tidy up the area and then I'll be back. Hello, we're back and the baking is now completed. So I'll show you the brownies and they smell really, really good. So these are the brownies. They've just come out of the oven, so they're still very hot. So I'm going to place them here on this so it doesn't burn the surface. And the main thing with the brownies is that you can test it with a knife, which I've just done, and they should still be slightly sticky. So just pop that knife in. I've just done one there. But pop it in, and it should be still slightly sticky. Okay, so nice, fresh, homemade brownies. Leave it to stand for a couple of minutes and then cut it into squares, or any other shape you may like, but I tend to opt for squares. So I'm going to cut this into squares. Okay, so that's the start of me cutting it into squares. So here we have the brownies cut into squares, and I'm just going to let them cool a bit longer, and then they'll be ready for eating. Okay, some really nicely cooled brownies. So I'm going to scoop the brownie out, and I'm just going to use a spoon to do this, and I'm going to serve it with some lovely ice cream. So I've got some ice cream prepared here, some lovely vanilla ice cream, and let me get the brownie scooped out. So it's very nice and soft. So popping it onto a little plate. Very, very soft. Okay, so slide that across there. Get another spoon out. I've got some ice cream which I've softened previously. So a nice big scoop of ice cream. And there we have it, brownies and ice cream. So I can't really angle that too much. Lovely brownies and ice cream. Okay, and it smells divine. So absolutely delightful, and I'm going to partake.